Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I don't know why, but today feels a little different in a good way. Maybe it's because we finally reached something that felt so far away in the beginning. We are now 1,000 people here, listening, sharing, growing together.
Yeah, it really does feel a bit unreal when you say it like that. I remember when we first started this, it was just an idea, just two people talking and thinking maybe someone out there will listen. And now there are so many of you. It's honestly a little emotional.
It is. And I keep thinking about the people behind that number. Like maybe you are listening right now while you're walking somewhere, or sitting alone in your room after a long day, or maybe even trying to relax before sleep. And somehow our voices are part of your day. That means a lot.
It really does. And I think what makes this special is that we're not perfect. And this is not a perfect place. We just talk about real things, real life, real struggles, especially when it comes to English and also just feeling stuck sometimes.
Yes, exactly. Because I think many of us don't just struggle with English, we also struggle with motivation, with confidence, with that feeling of, I want to change something, but I don't know how to start.
And maybe that's why you're here today. Not just to listen to English, but to feel a little less alone in that feeling.
So thank you, really. Thank you for being here, for listening, for staying with us until we reached this moment.
And if you enjoy this kind of calm, real conversation, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue.
Okay, let's start. I was thinking about something this morning, and it stayed in my mind all day, even during small things like making coffee or checking my phone without really thinking. I had this quiet feeling, like something is not wrong exactly, but also not right, and I couldn't really explain it.
That's interesting. I think I know that feeling. It's not a big problem, but it's also not a good feeling. It's like something is missing, or maybe something is waiting to change, but you don't know what it is.
Yes, exactly. And the strange part is, when I try to explain it, I feel like I sound ungrateful because my life is okay. Nothing bad is happening, but still, inside, there is this small voice that says, you are not moving. You are just staying in the same place.
I feel that too sometimes, especially when I see other people. Not in a bad way, but just when I notice that they are improving, they are speaking better English, they are doing new things. And then I look at myself and think, what am I doing?
Yeah, that comparison, it comes so quietly, doesn't it? You don't even notice when it starts. One moment you are just scrolling on your phone, and the next moment you feel like everyone is going somewhere, and you are just watching.
And the worst part is you start to feel like you are behind, even if there is no real race. But your mind creates this idea that you should be faster, better, more confident. And then you feel tired without even doing anything.
That's so true. And I think this also happens a lot with English. Like you want to speak, you want to improve, but then you think too much. You think about mistakes, about how you sound, about what people will think, and then you just stay quiet.
Yeah, staying quiet becomes easier than trying. And at first, it feels like a small decision, like, okay, I'll speak next time. But then next time comes and you do the same thing again.
And slowly, without realizing it, you build this habit of not trying. Not because you don't want to improve, but because you are a little afraid and also a little tired of feeling uncomfortable.
I think many people don't talk about that part. Everyone says, practice more, just speak. But they don't talk about that feeling in your chest when you want to say something, but you stop yourself.
Yes, that moment is so real. I remember one time I was in a simple situation, nothing special, just talking with someone, and I had a sentence in my mind. I knew what I wanted to say, but then I started thinking, is this correct? Is this the right word? And in those few seconds, I lost the moment.
That happens to me too. And after that, you feel a bit disappointed, not because of the language, but because you didn't allow yourself to try.
Exactly. And I think that's where this stuck feeling comes from. It's not that we are not learning, it's that we are not moving forward in real life situations.
Yeah, learning inside your head is one thing, but using it in real life is something completely different. And sometimes that gap feels very big.
And the strange thing is, we don't need a big change. It's not like we need to become perfect or fluent in one day. But still, we wait. We wait for the right moment, or for more confidence, or for some kind of sign that we are ready.
But that moment never really comes, right? Because confidence doesn't come first. It comes after you try, after you make mistakes, after you feel a little uncomfortable many times.
Yeah, but knowing that and doing that are very different things. Because in real life, when you are in that moment, your emotions are stronger than your logic.
That's so true. You can understand everything, you can listen, you can even think in English sometimes, but when it's time to speak, something blocks you.
And then at the end of the day, you sit alone, maybe in your room, and you think, I could do better. I want to do better. But the next day feels the same.
Yeah, it becomes a quiet cycle. Not dramatic, not loud, but still very real.
I think many people listening right now feel this, even if they never said it out loud.
I think so too. And maybe that's why this conversation is important. Not to fix everything today, but just to say, this is normal. You are not the only one.
Yeah, and maybe, just maybe, understanding this feeling is the first small step to changing it.
Not a big step, just a small one.
Just a small one. You know, when you said a quiet cycle, that stayed in my mind because it really doesn't feel like a big problem from the outside. But inside, it slowly takes your energy. Not all at once, but little by little.
Yeah, exactly. It's like nothing is broken, but nothing is growing either. And after some time, that feeling becomes heavier, even if your days look normal.
I think that's why it's hard to explain to other people. If you tell someone, I feel stuck, they might say, but your life is fine. And they're not wrong, but they also don't feel what you feel inside.
Right. Because being fine is not the same as feeling alive or moving forward. And sometimes we stay in that fine place for too long because it feels safe.
Safe, but also a little empty, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I understand that. Can I be honest too?
Of course.
There are days when I realize I didn't really do anything new. I followed the same routine, I had the same thoughts, and at night, I feel like the day just passed without leaving anything behind.
That happens to me too. And I think the strange part is we don't notice it immediately. It's not like one bad day. It's more like many small days that feel the same. And suddenly you look back and think, what did I actually change?
And when it comes to English, it's even more clear sometimes because you can study, you can watch videos, and you can listen, but if you don't use it in real life, you feel like you are not really improving.
Yeah, and that creates another feeling, a kind of quiet frustration, because you are trying, but you don't see the results in your daily life.
And then your motivation goes down, not because you are lazy, but because you don't feel progress.
Exactly. And when motivation goes down, you start doing less. And when you do less, you feel worse. And that's how the cycle continues.
Yeah, it's like you're walking in a circle, but very slowly, so you don't even realize it at first.
I think many people believe that change comes from big decisions. Like one day you wake up and everything is different. But in real life, doesn't work like that.
No, it really doesn't. Most of the time, change is very small, almost invisible, and that's why we don't trust it.
That's a very important point because we want to feel something big, something strong, like today is the day I change. But instead, real change feels quiet, almost boring sometimes.
And because it feels small, we think it's not enough, so we stop.
Yes. We stop before it becomes something real.
You know, this reminds me of something that happened to me a few months ago. It was a very simple moment. Nothing special, but it stayed in my mind.
Happened.
I was at a small cafe, just sitting alone, and I heard two people speaking English at the table next to me. They were not perfect. They made small mistakes. They paused sometimes, but they were speaking freely, without fear.
That sounds nice.
It was, but at the same time, I felt something inside. Not exactly jealousy, but something close to it. I thought, why am I not doing this? I understand English. I know many words. So why am I still quiet?
That's a very honest question.
Yeah, and I didn't have a good answer. I just sat there listening, and I realized that the difference was not knowledge, it was something else.
Confidence?
Maybe, but not the kind of confidence people usually talk about. It was more like permission.
Permission?
Yes, it felt like those people gave themselves permission to speak, even if it's not perfect. And I realized I never really gave myself that permission.
Wow, that's actually very deep. Because I think many people are waiting for permission, but they don't even know it.
Exactly. We wait for a sign or for someone to say, "Now you are ready." But no one says that. And we stay in that waiting mode.
And while we wait, time passes, and we stay in the same place.
Yes, and the interesting part is nothing is really stopping us. There's no real wall. It's just a feeling inside us.
A very strong feeling, though.
Very strong, yes. Because it feels real. Even if it's not a physical thing, it feels like a real barrier.
I remember something similar. One time, I was trying to speak, and I stopped myself again, like always. But this time, I noticed something. The moment I stopped, I felt a small regret. Very quick, but very clear.
That small regret is important, I think.
Yeah, because it showed me that I actually wanted to speak. It wasn't about ability, it was about fear and habit.
That's a powerful realization.
It is, but also a bit uncomfortable. Because when you see that clearly, you can't say, I can't do it. You have to say, I didn't do it.
And that changes everything, right?
Yeah, because I can't feels like something outside your control, but I didn't means you have some responsibility.
And responsibility can feel heavy, but also freeing at the same time.
Exactly. Because if I didn't do it today, maybe I can do it tomorrow.
That maybe is important. It's not a big promise. It's just a small opening.
Yeah, and I think that's where real change starts. Not from a big decision, but from a small, honest moment where you say, okay, maybe I can try.
Not perfectly, just try.
Just try.
You know, hearing this makes me feel a bit calmer. Because sometimes we think we need a big plan, a big system, but maybe we just need to notice these small moments more.
I agree. Because those small moments are everywhere. We just ignore them.
Or we don't trust them.
Yeah, we think they are too small to matter.
But maybe they are the only things that really matter.
Maybe. And maybe the problem is not that we are stuck, but that we're not paying attention to the small chances to move.
That's a very different way to look at it.
It is, and it feels a bit lighter, doesn't it?
Yeah, lighter and also more possible.
More possible. I like that. When you say more possible, I feel something change inside, even if it's small. Because for a long time, I think I was waiting for things to feel easy before I tried. And now I'm starting to understand that maybe things become easier after we try, not before.
Yes, and that's a very different way of thinking. Because if you wait for things to feel easy, you might wait for a very long time, maybe even forever. But if you accept that things can feel a little uncomfortable in the beginning, then suddenly you have more chances to move.
I think this is where many people get stuck without realizing it. They think, when I feel ready, I will start speaking more, I will practice more, I will change my routine. But that ready feeling is very quiet. It doesn't come like a strong signal.
Exactly. And sometimes it doesn't come at all. Or it comes so softly that we don't trust it. We think, no, I still need more time, more knowledge, more confidence. But in reality, we already have enough to begin.
That reminds me of something I did last week. It was a very small thing, but for me, it felt important. I was in a simple situation again, just talking to someone, and I had that same moment where I usually stop myself. But this time, I didn't wait too long.
You just spoke?
Yes, not perfectly, not smoothly, but I said what I wanted to say. And honestly, it wasn't amazing. I made a mistake, I paused, I felt a bit nervous, but nothing bad happened.
That's the key moment, I think. Nothing bad happened.
Exactly. And after that, I had this quiet feeling, like a small relief. Not a big success, not something to celebrate loudly, but something inside me said, okay, this is possible.
I really like that because many people expect a big, powerful feeling after they try something new. But in reality, it's often very quiet, very simple.
Yeah, and if you don't pay attention, you can even miss it. You can think, that was nothing special, and continue your day like nothing changed.
But actually, something did change.
Yeah, something small, but real.
You know, I had a similar moment, but in a different way. I was alone, just thinking in my head, and I noticed that I was thinking in English for a few minutes without translating everything.
Really? That's a big step.
It felt strange because I didn't plan it. It just happened naturally. And at first, I didn't even notice. But then I stopped and thought, wait, this is new.
That's actually amazing because it shows that your brain is slowly adapting, even when you aren't forcing it.
Yes, and it made me realize something important. Progress is not always something you do consciously. Sometimes it happens quietly in the background.
That's such a comforting idea because it means even on days when we feel like we aren't improving, something might still be changing inside us.
Exactly. And maybe we are too focused on big results, so we don't see these small, quiet changes.
I think we also compare our inside with other people's outside. We see someone speaking confidently and we think they are so far ahead, but we don't see their small steps, their mistakes, their quiet moments.
Yeah, we only see the result, not the process.
And that makes our own process feel slow or not enough.
But if we could see everything, maybe we would feel differently.
Definitely. Maybe we would be more patient with ourselves.
Patience. That's something I struggle with a lot.
Me too. Especially when I want to improve something. I want to see results quickly. I want to feel that I'm moving forward. And when that doesn't happen, I feel frustrated.
Yes. And sometimes that frustration makes us stop, even if we were actually doing something good.
That's so true. It's like we punish ourselves for not being fast enough instead of appreciating that we are trying.
And the funny thing is, if we continue slowly, we would probably reach our goal. But we stop because it feels too slow.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it?
It is. But I think it's also very human.
Yes. Very human.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
Do you think people are afraid of being slow? Not just in English, but in life in general?
That's a very interesting question. I think yes, because we live in a world where everything looks fast. People show their success, their progress, their achievements, and it creates this idea that we should also move quickly.
And if we don't, we feel like we are doing something wrong.
Exactly. But real life is not like that. Real growth is slow, sometimes even invisible.
And maybe that's why it feels lonely sometimes, because slow progress is quiet. There is no big moment, no applause.
Yeah, it's just you doing small things day after day.
And sometimes you don't even know if it's working.
That's the hardest part, I think. Continuing without clear proof.
But maybe that's also where real strength comes from.
I agree, because if you can continue without immediate results, it means you trust the process, even if you don't fully understand it.
And that kind of trust doesn't come easily.
No, it doesn't. It grows slowly, just like everything else.
You know, this conversation is making me think differently about progress. Not as something big and visible, but as something quiet and personal.
Yes. Something that doesn't need to be perfect to be real.
And maybe something that doesn't need to be fast to be meaningful.
I love that sentence.
Me too.
It feels like we're allowed to move at our own pace.
Yeah, and that idea feels very freeing.
It really does. You know, when you say allowed to move at our own pace, it makes me think about something deeper. Because maybe the problem is not only that we compare ourselves to others, maybe we also don't really accept our own rhythm.
That's true, and I don't think we notice that easily. We say, I want to improve, but inside there is also this pressure. Like, I must improve faster. I must be better already.
Yeah, and that pressure changes everything. Even something simple like practicing English or speaking a little suddenly feels heavy, like a task instead of something natural.
And when something feels heavy, we avoid it.
Exactly. not because we are lazy, but because we want to protect ourselves from that uncomfortable feeling.
I think that's an important point. People often say, just be disciplined, but they don't talk about how emotions affect our actions. If something feels stressful or connected to failure, your mind tries to escape it.
Yeah, and that escape can look very normal, like checking your phone, watching something, doing something else that feels easier.
And then the day ends and you realize you didn't do the thing you actually care about.
That moment at the end of the day, it's very quiet, but also very honest.
Very honest, yes. Because there is no distraction anymore. It's just you and your thoughts.
I had one of those moments recently. I was sitting in my room and I started thinking about my day. Everything was normal, nothing bad happened, but I felt like I avoided something again.
Was it related to English?
Yes, I had a chance to speak, just a small chance, nothing big. And I saw it, I knew it was there, but I didn't take it.
That feeling after, it's not anger, right? It's something softer, but still uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's more like a quiet disappointment. Not in a dramatic way, but enough to stay in your mind.
And what did you think in that moment?
At first, I wanted to say, it's okay, next time. But then I stopped and thought more carefully. I asked myself, why did I not try? Not in a negative way, just honestly.
That's not easy to do.
No, it isn't, because when you ask that question, you have to face the real answer.
And what was your answer?
It was simple. I was afraid of feeling uncomfortable, not of making a big mistake, not of someone judging me strongly, just that small, uncomfortable feeling.
That small feeling has a lot of power.
Yes, much more than we think, because it comes quickly and we react to it automatically without even thinking.
It's like a reflex.
Exactly. And I realized something in that moment. I'm not really afraid of English. I'm afraid of that feeling.
That's a very important difference.
It is, because if the problem is not the language, but the feeling, then maybe the solution is also different.
Not more studying, but more accepting that feeling?
Yeah, accepting it and maybe even expecting it. Like saying, okay, this will feel a bit uncomfortable and that's normal.
That changes the situation a lot. Because instead of waiting to feel comfortable, you accept that discomfort is part of the process.
And suddenly, it doesn't feel like a problem anymore. It feels like a step.
A necessary step.
Yes, and I think this is something many people don't realize. They think they need to remove discomfort to move forward, but actually, they need to move with it.
That's a powerful idea. Moving with discomfort, not away from it.
It sounds simple, but in real life, it's not easy.
No, it's not. Because in the moment, your instinct is to avoid that feeling. It feels safer.
But safer doesn't always mean better.
That's true. Safer can also mean staying in the same place.
Exactly. And I think I'm starting to understand that if I want something to change, I have to accept that some moments will feel a little uncomfortable.
Not terrible, just a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, and maybe that's okay.
I think it is. Because when I look back, the moments where I felt a bit uncomfortable are often the moments where something actually changed.
That's such a good observation. Comfort feels nice, but it doesn't always create change.
And discomfort feels difficult, but it often brings growth.
When you say it like that, it sounds very clear. But in daily life, it's easy to forget.
Yes, because emotions are stronger than logic in those moments.
Exactly. But maybe we don't need to remember everything perfectly. Maybe we just need to remember one small thing.
Like what?
Like, this feeling is not danger. It's just discomfort.
That's a very helpful sentence.
I think so too. Because if your mind thinks something is dangerous, you will avoid it immediately. But if you understand that it's just uncomfortable, maybe you can stay a little longer.
Even a few seconds more can change the result.
Yes. Sometimes just a few seconds is enough to speak, to try, to take that small step.
And that small step can change how you feel about yourself.
Exactly. It's not only about English, it's about how you see yourself. When you try, even in a small way, you start to see yourself differently.
Less like someone who is stuck and more like someone who is trying.
And that identity change is very important.
It is. Because once you see yourself as someone who tries, it becomes easier to try again.
Yes. It creates a new cycle, a better one.
Not perfect, but better.
And more real.
You know, I feel like this conversation is slowly changing how I see my own actions.
Me too. It's not a big, dramatic change, but something small and clear.
And maybe that's enough for now.
Yes. Maybe that's exactly enough.
You know, something just came to my mind while we were talking. It's a bit personal, but I think many people might feel the same, even if they don't say it.
You can share it. I think these are the moments that help people connect.
Okay, so sometimes when I think about improving my English or even changing something in my daily life, I notice that I create a very big image in my head. Like, I imagine a better version of myself. Someone who speaks fluently, who feels confident, who knows what to say in every situation.
That sounds familiar already.
And at first, it feels motivating. It feels like, yes, this is who I want to become. But after a while, something strange happens. That image becomes so big, so perfect, that it actually makes me feel smaller.
That's a very honest observation. because that perfect version can feel inspiring, but also very far away.
Exactly. It starts to feel distant, almost unreachable. And then when I look at myself in the present moment, I feel like the gap is too big.
And when the gap feels too big, it becomes difficult to take even a small step.
Yeah, because your mind says, what's the point? This small step is nothing compared to where you want to be.
I think many people live in that space without realizing it. They focus so much on the final version that they forget the small steps that actually create it.
And the sad part is, those small steps are the only real way forward.
Yes, there is no other path.
I remember one evening, I was thinking exactly like that. I felt like I was not improving fast enough, and I started comparing myself to that perfect version again. And honestly, I felt tired just thinking about it.
Tired before even starting.
Yes. And in that moment, I asked myself a different question. Instead of thinking, how do I become that person? I asked, what is one small thing I can do today, even if it feels very simple?
That's a very different question.
It is. And the answer was also really simple. I told myself, just speak one sentence. Not a full conversation, not something perfect, just one sentence.
That feels much more possible.
Yes, and because it felt possible, I actually did it. It was a very small moment, maybe not even important from the outside, but inside, it felt like I moved.
That's the key. You moved.
Yes. And after that, I didn't suddenly become confident or fluent, but I felt something new. I felt lighter.
Because you didn't carry that big pressure anymore.
Exactly. I was not trying to become a perfect version of myself in one moment. I was just being someone who tries one small thing.
That changes the whole experience.
It really does. And I think we underestimate how powerful small actions are, especially when they are consistent.
Consistency. That's another word people hear a lot, but maybe don't fully understand.
Yeah, because we often think consistency means doing something big every day. But maybe real consistency is just doing something small again and again.
Even when you don't feel motivated.
Especially when you don't feel motivated.
That's the difficult part.
It is, but also the most important part, I think, because motivation comes and goes. Some days you feel good, some days you don't. But if your actions depend only on motivation, then your progress will also be unstable.
That's very true. I had a similar experience recently. I decided to do something very simple. Every day, I would think in English for just a few minutes, even if I didn't feel like it.
That's a great example.
At first, it felt a bit forced. My thoughts were slow. Sometimes I didn't find the right words, and I felt a bit frustrated. But I didn't try to make it perfect. I just continued.
And what happened after some time?
Something interesting. It became easier, but not in a dramatic way. It was more like my brain started to accept it as normal. It didn't feel like a big effort anymore.
That's amazing, because that's how habits form, right? Not through big actions, but through repetition.
Yes, and I realized something important. When something becomes normal, it doesn't feel like work anymore. It just becomes part of your life.
And that's the goal, I think. Not to force yourself forever, but to make things feel natural.
Exactly. And that takes time, but it's possible.
You know, this makes me think about something else. I think many people are not only afraid of failing, they're also afraid of starting small.
That's interesting. Why do you think that?
Because starting small can feel like it's not enough. It doesn't look impressive, it doesn't feel like a big change, and sometimes we want something bigger.
Yes, we want to feel that we are really changing, not just doing something small.
But maybe that's the misunderstanding. Small doesn't mean unimportant.
In fact, small is the only thing we can control every day.
Exactly. And if we respect small actions, they can become something big over time.
But if we ignore them, we stay in the same place.
Yes. And I think this is where many people feel stuck. Not because they can't do something big, but because they don't believe in something small.
That's a powerful sentence.
It feels true. At least for me.
For me too, because when I look back, the moments where I improved were not big moments. They were small, repeated actions that I didn't even notice at the.
And only later you see the difference.
Yes. And then you realize, oh, I was moving all this time.
That realization is so beautiful.
It is. Because it gives you hope.
Yes. Quiet hope.
Not loud, not dramatic, but real.
Real. I like that word.
Me too.
I feel like we are slowly understanding something important here. Not in a complicated way, but in a very simple and honest way.
Yes, and maybe that's enough. We don't need something complicated. We just need something we can actually use in real life.
Exactly. There is something else I've been noticing lately, and it's a bit uncomfortable to admit, but I think it's important. Sometimes it's not only fear or discomfort that stops me. Sometimes it's also this quiet habit of delaying things.
Delaying? You mean like saying, I'll do it later?
Yes, exactly. Not in a dramatic way, just small delays. Like, I'll practice later, or I'll speak next time, or even I'll start tomorrow when I feel more ready.
That sounds very familiar. And the strange thing is, it feels reasonable in the moment. It doesn't feel like you are avoiding something. It feels like you are just choosing a better time.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. It doesn't feel like a bad decision. it feels logical, even smart. But when you look at it from a distance, you see a pattern.
A pattern of always waiting.
Exactly. And I started asking myself, why do I keep waiting? Not in a judgmental way, but just with curiosity.
And what did you find?
I think I realized that I connect starting with pressure. Like, when I say I will start, I imagine doing something perfectly, doing it for a long time, doing it the right way, and that feels heavy.
So, starting feels like a big responsibility.
Yes, and because it feels big, I delay it. But the funny thing is, the longer I delay, the bigger it feels.
That's so true. It's like a small task becomes a big one just because we keep thinking about it.
Exactly. And I noticed something else. When I delay something, it stays in my mind all day. Even if I'm doing other things, there is this small voice saying, "You didn't do it yet."
That background noise, it's very tiring.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes it's more tiring than actually doing the thing.
That's a very important realization because many times we think avoiding something saves energy, but in reality, it slowly takes more energy.
Exactly. And one day, I tried something different. Instead of planning a perfect moment to start, I told myself, just begin in a very small way, right now.
Right now, that's powerful.
Yeah, because right now removes all the thinking. There is no time to create pressure, no time to imagine a perfect version. It's just a small action.
What did you do?
It was very simple. I was sitting, doing nothing important, and I said one sentence in English out loud. Just one. It felt a bit strange, but also very real.
That's interesting. And how did you feel after?
Honestly, a bit surprised because I realized I didn't need a perfect moment. I didn't need to prepare. I could just start, even in a very small way.
And that changes your relationship with starting.
Yes, completely. Starting is no longer something big and heavy. It becomes something small and possible.
I think this is something many people need to hear because they think they need motivation first, or a good mood, or a clear plan. But maybe they just need to begin in a simple way.
Exactly. And I also noticed that once you start, even in a small way, it becomes easier to continue. Not always, but often.
Yes, starting is the hardest part. After that, things flow a bit more naturally.
But we focus so much on the whole journey that we forget the importance of the first small step.
That's very true. And I think there is another layer to this. Sometimes we are not only delaying actions, we are also delaying belief.
What do you mean?
I mean, we tell ourselves, I will believe in myself when I improve, or I will feel confident when I speak better. So we delay that feeling too.
That's very deep because it means we are waiting for results before giving ourselves support.
Exactly. But maybe it should be the opposite. Maybe we need to give ourselves a little support first, even if we aren't perfect yet.
Yeah, like saying, it's okay to be where I am right now.
And also, it's okay to try, even if it's not perfect.
That kind of thinking feels much kinder.
And also more realistic.
Yes, because perfection is not a real starting point. It's something that comes slowly over time.
And maybe never fully comes, to be honest.
That's also true. But maybe that's okay.
I think it is, because if we wait for perfection, we will always feel like we aren't ready.
And that brings us back to that waiting cycle again.
Yes, waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting for the right moment.
But life doesn't really wait, does it?
No, it doesn't. It keeps moving, slowly but constantly.
And maybe we need to move with it, even in small ways.
Even in imperfect ways. Even in imperfect ways.
Especially in imperfect ways.
You know, this conversation is making me realize something about myself. I always thought I needed a clear plan to improve, something structured and perfect. But now I'm starting to feel like maybe I just need to be more present in small moments.
I feel the same because those small moments are where real life happens. Not in big plans, but in everyday situations.
And those situations are full of opportunities, if we notice them.
Yes, a small conversation, a small thought, a small decision, they all matter.
Kindness, that's something we don't often connect with learning or improving, but it might be very important.
I think it is. Because if the process feels too hard emotionally, we won't continue. But if it feels supportive, even in a small way, we can keep going.
That makes a lot of sense, because improvement is not only about actions, it's also about how you feel while doing those actions.
Exactly. And if you feel constantly stressed or not enough, you will lose energy.
But if you feel a little bit of progress, a little bit of acceptance, you gain energy.
Yes, and that energy helps you continue.
You know, this reminds me of something I experienced recently. I had a day where I didn't do much in terms of English. I didn't speak, I didn't practice actively, and at night, I started to feel that familiar disappointment.
I know that feeling.
But this time, I tried something different. Instead of saying, "You did nothing," I asked myself, "Did I do anything? Even a little?"
And what was your answer?
I realized that I listened to something in English during the day, even if I wasn't fully focused, and I understood parts of it. So I said, "Okay, that's something."
That's a very small shift, but it changes the feeling.
Yes, it does. Instead of feeling like a failure,
I felt like I was still in the process.
And that feeling makes it easier to continue the next day.
Exactly. Because when you feel like you are already failing, it's harder to start again. But when you feel like you are still moving, even slowly, it's easier.
I think this is something very important for people to understand. Progress is not always visible, and it's not always perfect, but it's still progress.
And recognizing it is part of the journey.
Yeah, because if you don't recognize it, you lose the motivation to continue.
And motivation is not something constant. It needs to be supported.
Supported by small wins, small moments, small awareness.
Exactly.
You know, I feel like we are slowly building a new way of thinking, but in a very natural way. Not like rules, but like small realizations.
Yeah, and that makes it easier to accept because it doesn't feel forced.
It just feels real.
Real and possible.
Yes, possible.
And maybe that's enough for now.
Yes, more than enough. There's something I've been noticing more clearly these days, and it's a bit uncomfortable, but also very honest. Sometimes I think we don't only struggle with actions or habits, we also struggle with how we see.
That's very true because even before we try something, we already have an idea in our mind about who we are.
Yes, like I'm not confident, or I'm not good at speaking, or even I'm always like this. And those thoughts feel so normal that we don't question them.
And when you repeat those thoughts many, many times, they start to feel like facts.
I think this is very important, especially for people learning English. Because if you believe I can't speak, then even if you know words, even if you understand, you will still stay quiet.
Yes, because your identity becomes stronger than your ability.
That's a powerful sentence.
Yeah, it feels true to me. I've seen it in myself. There were moments when I actually knew what to say, but something inside me said, "This is not you. You don't speak like this." And I stopped.
That inner voice can be very limiting.
Yes, and it doesn't sound aggressive. It sounds calm, almost logical. That's why it's hard to notice.
It feels like a quiet truth, even if it's not.
Exactly. And I started to ask myself, what if this is just a story I've been telling myself for a long time?
That question changes everything.
It does. Because if it's a story, then maybe it can change.
Not immediately, but slowly.
Yeah, slowly, like everything else.
I had a similar realization recently. I always thought of myself as someone who understands English but doesn't speak much. That was my identity for a long time.
That sounds very familiar.
And because I believed that, I acted like that. Even when I had chances to speak, I stayed quiet because it felt normal for me.
Like you were just being yourself.
Exactly.
But then one day I thought, what if I'm not fixed like this? What if I can be someone who tries more?
That's a big shift.
It is, but it didn't feel big in that moment. It was just a small thought, like a possibility.
And what happened after that?
I didn't suddenly change everything, but I noticed something. When I had a small chance to speak, that thought came to my mind again. Maybe I can be someone who tries. And that made it a little easier to act differently.
That's so interesting because you didn't force yourself. You just allowed a different idea to exist.
And that creates resistance.
Yes, because your actions and your identity don't match.
But when your identity starts to shift, even a little, your actions follow more naturally.
Exactly. And the best part is you don't need to create a perfect identity. You don't need to say, I am confident, I am fluent. That might feel too far.
But you can say, I am someone who is trying, and that feels real.
Yes. And that small change in language changes how you feel.
Yes, step by step.
So action comes first, even if it's small and imperfect.
Exactly. And then confidence slowly grows from those small actions.
Not suddenly, but gradually.
Yeah, like everything we've been talking about.
It all connects, doesn't it?
It really does. Small actions, accepting discomfort, being kind to yourself, and now changing how you see yourself.
It's like building a new foundation, but very slowly.
Yeah, and that makes it stronger.
You know, I feel like if someone is listening to us right now, they might realize something about themselves. Maybe not everything, but at least one small thing.
And that one small thing can be enough to start something new.
Yes, because change doesn't need everything to be clear. It just needs one small opening.
One small opening. I like that.
Me too.
It feels gentle, not forced.
And real.
Yes, very real. There's another thing I've been quietly thinking about, especially after everything we said. It's about how we use time, or maybe how we feel about time.
That sounds interesting. What do you mean exactly?
I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm late. Not in a physical way, but in life. Like I should already be better, already more confident, already speaking more easily. And when I don't see that, I feel like I missed something.
That feeling, it's very common, I think. Many people feel like they are behind, even if there is no real timeline.
Yeah, and that's the strange part. There is no clear rule that says you must be at this level at this age, or you must speak perfectly by now. But still, we create that pressure inside.
I think it comes from what we see around us. People showing their progress, their success, their results, and we compare our inside with their outside again.
Yeah, and we forget that everyone has a different path, a different speed, a different story.
But our mind doesn't always remember that. It just says, you are late.
Exactly. And when you feel late, something happens. You either rush or you stop.
That's very true. Some people try to do everything quickly and they feel stressed. Others feel so overwhelmed that they don't even start.
And both situations make the process harder.
Yeah, because when you rush, you lose the natural flow. And when you stop, you lose momentum.
I had a moment like this not long ago. I was thinking about how long I've been learning English, and I suddenly felt like I should be much better by now. That thought stayed in my mind, and it made everything feel heavier.
I understand that. It's like your past becomes something you judge instead of something you learn from.
Yeah, and in that moment, I didn't feel motivated. I felt tired.
Because that kind of thinking doesn't give energy, it takes it away.
Exactly. And then I asked myself something very simple. What if I'm not late? What if I'm just where I am?
That's a very different way to see it.
It is. And at first, it didn't feel very strong. It felt like a quiet idea, almost too simple. But the more I stayed with it, the more it made sense.
Because it removes that pressure of time.
Yeah, and when the pressure is gone, you can breathe a little more. You can focus on what you can do now instead of what you didn't do before.
That's very important. Because we can't change the past, but we can always choose something small in the present.
Exactly. And I think this idea of being late is something that stops many people, not only in English, but in many areas of life.
Yeah, people think it's too late for me, or I should have started earlier, and then they don't start at all.
But when you really think about it, starting now is always better than not starting.
Always.
Even if it feels slow, even if it feels small, it's still movement.
And movement changes things.
Yes, slowly, but surely.
You know, I had a similar realization, but in a different way. I was thinking about how I spend my time during the day, and I noticed that I often wait for free time to do something important.
That sounds very familiar.
But that free time doesn't always come. Or when it comes, I feel tired and I don't use it the way I imagined.
Yes, we imagine perfect conditions, but real life is not perfect.
Exactly. And then I thought, what if I stop waiting for a perfect moment and just use small moments during the day?
That's a very practical idea.
Yes, and I tried it. For example, when I'm walking or waiting for something, or even doing something simple, I try to think a little in English or say a few words in my mind.
That's actually very powerful because those moments are everywhere.
Yes, and they don't feel heavy. They are small, natural, part of life.
And because they are small, it's easier to repeat them.
Exactly. And after some time, I realized that I was practicing more than before without feeling like I was studying.
That's amazing because it shows that improvement doesn't need a special time. It can be part of your normal day.
Yeah, and that makes it more sustainable.
I think this connects with what we said earlier about starting small, because when something is small and flexible, it fits into your life more easily.
And when it fits into your life, it becomes a habit.
Yes. And habits are what really create long-term change.
Not big efforts, but small repeated actions.
Exactly.
You know, this conversation is slowly changing how I see time and progress. I don't feel that pressure of being late as much as before.
Me too. It feels like we don't need to catch up with anyone. We just need to continue.
Continue at our own pace.
Yeah, at our own pace.
That feels peaceful.
It really does. After everything we've talked about, I'm starting to see something more clearly. It's like all these small ideas. Starting small, accepting discomfort, being patient, not comparing too much. They all connect to one deeper thing.
What do you think that deeper thing is?
I think it's learning to trust the process, even when you don't see clear results yet.
That's a big one. Because trusting something you can't fully see or measure, that's not easy.
No, it's not, especially in a world where we are used to quick results. You do something, you expect to see progress immediately, but real growth doesn't always work like that.
Yeah, sometimes you don't see anything for a while, and that makes you question everything.
Exactly. You start asking, is this working? Am I wasting my time? Should I try something else? And those questions can slowly break your consistency.
I've had those thoughts many times, especially when I try something new and don't see results quickly. It makes me want to stop and look for a better or faster way.
Yeah, but sometimes there is no faster way. Sometimes the only way is to continue, even when it feels slow.
And that's where trust becomes important.
Yeah, trusting that small actions repeated over time will create something, even if you don't see it immediately.
But how do you build that trust? Because it's easy to say, but difficult to feel.
That's a good question. I think it starts with small evidence, not big results, but small moments where you notice a change.
Like when you understand something a bit faster or when you speak one sentence more easily.
Exactly. Those small moments are like signals. They show you that something is happening, even if it's not big yet.
And if you pay attention to those signals, your trust slowly grows.
Yeah, but if you ignore them, you feel like nothing is changing.
That's very true, because your focus shapes your experience. If you only look for big results, you'll feel like you are not improving.
But if you notice small progress, you feel more motivated to continue.
And motivation supports consistency.
Yes, it all connects again.
You know, I think there is another important part of this.
Sometimes we stop not because we don't trust the process, but because we don't trust ourselves.
That's very deep and very true.
Because even if we understand that small steps work, we might think, but I won't continue. I always stop after some time. And that belief makes us stop earlier.
Yeah, it's like we expect ourselves to fail, so we don't fully try.
Exactly. It becomes a self-fulfilling pattern.
I've felt that before. Starting something with a small voice inside saying, "You won't keep doing this." And that voice makes everything harder.
So maybe trusting the process is not enough. We also need to slowly rebuild trust in ourselves.
I agree. And I think that trust comes from keeping small promises to yourself.
Small promises?
Yeah, not big ones like, "I will practice every day for 1 hour," but small ones like, "I will say one sentence," or "I will think in English for 2 minutes."
And when you do that, you prove to yourself that you can be consistent.
Exactly. And that builds self-trust. Slowly.
That makes a lot of sense because confidence is not only about ability, it's also about trust. Trust that you will show up, even in a small way.
Yeah, and once you start to trust yourself a little more, everything feels lighter.
Because you are not fighting with yourself anymore.
Exactly. You are working with yourself.
That's a very peaceful idea.
It is. And I think many people are tired, not because they are doing too much, but because they are constantly fighting with themselves.
That inner conflict, it takes a lot of energy.
Yes, but when you reduce that conflict, when you become a bit more supportive to yourself, you feel calmer.
And in that calm state, it's easier to take action.
Yeah, because you are not forcing yourself, you are allowing yourself.
That's a beautiful difference.
It really is.
And when you feel that kind of guilt, it's harder to feel motivated.
Exactly, because motivation needs a lighter feeling, not a heavy one.
So maybe one of the most important things is to let go of that past pressure, even if it's not easy.
Yeah, not completely forget it, but not carry it into every new moment.
That makes a lot of sense. Because if every day feels like a new chance, then you have more energy to act.
Exactly. And I think this idea connects with something very simple, but very powerful, allowing yourself to begin again.
Begin again? I like that.
Me too, because it doesn't matter how many times you stopped before. You can always begin again, even in a small way.
And that removes the idea of failure.
Yeah, because stopping is not the end. It's just part of the process.
That's a very kind way to see it.
And also a realistic one, because no one continues perfectly all the time.
That's true. Everyone has moments where they stop, lose focus, or feel tired.
Yes, And that's normal. The important part is not avoiding those moments, but learning how to come back.
Coming back? That might be more important than starting.
I think so too, because starting once is easy, but coming back again and again, that's where real change happens.
And coming back requires a different mindset. Not perfection, but acceptance.
Yes, acceptance and patience.
You know, this makes me think about something very simple. Maybe improving your English or changing your life is not about doing everything right, but about not giving up completely.
That's a very powerful idea.
Because if you don't give up, even if you move slowly, you will still move forward.
Exactly. And forward, even slowly, is still forward.
Yes, and that's enough.
I feel like this idea can really help people because many people think if I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all.
But that way of thinking stops everything.
Yes, and it creates unnecessary pressure.
But if you allow yourself to be imperfect, to stop and start again, to move slowly, then the journey becomes more natural.
And more sustainable.
Exactly.
You know, I feel like we are reaching a point where things are becoming simpler, not more complicated.
Yes. Simpler, but also deeper.
That's a good way to set it.
'Cause sometimes we think we need complex solutions, but maybe we just need simple ideas that we actually follow.
Exactly. Simple, honest, and realistic.
And maybe that's what makes them powerful.
I believe so.
Me too.
It feels like we don't need to change everything. We just need to change how we approach small things.
And those small changes can create something bigger over time.
Yes, slowly, quietly, but surely.
And that feels enough.
Yes, it really does. You know, after everything we've been talking about, I feel like there is one more thing that quietly affects everything, even if we don't always notice it.
What is it?
The environment around us, not only the physical place, but also what we see, what we hear, and what we repeat every day.
That's very interesting because we usually think change comes only from inside us, but the outside world plays a big role too.
Yeah, exactly. For example, if your day is full of your native language, your usual habits, your usual thoughts, then English becomes something separate, something you try only in special moments.
That's very true. It becomes like a task instead of something natural.
But if you slowly bring English into your normal life, even in small ways, it starts to feel more familiar.
Like listening to something while walking or thinking simple thoughts in English during the day.
Yes, exactly like that. Small changes in your environment can change how often you interact with the language.
And when you interact more often, even in a light way, your brain starts to adapt without too much pressure.
Yes, and that's the important part, without too much pressure.
Because pressure makes things harder, but familiarity makes things easier.
I completely agree. Because when something is too hard, we resist it. But when it feels manageable, we accept it.
And acceptance is the first step to consistency.
Yes, and consistency creates results over time.
It all connects again.
It really does. Everything we talked about, small steps, self-trust, patience, starting again, changing identity, and now environment and enjoyment, they all support each other.
It's like building a system, but a very simple and human one.
Yeah, not a strict system, but a flexible one.
One that fits real life.
Exactly.
You know, I feel like if someone listens to this conversation, they might start to see their situation differently. Not as something complicated or impossible, but as something that can change slowly.
Yes, and that slowly is not a bad thing anymore.
No, it's actually a good thing.
Because slow change is usually more stable.
And more real.
Yeah, more real.
I feel like we are moving towards something. Not a final answer, but a clearer understanding.
Me too. And I think that's enough for now. We don't need to solve everything. We just need to see things a bit more clearly.
And maybe take one small step after this.
Yes. Just one.
Just one.
That feels right.
It really does.
You know, after all these small ideas we talked about, I keep coming back to one simple question. Not a big question, not something complicated, just something very quiet. What can I do today in a real and honest way?
That's a beautiful question because it doesn't ask for perfection. It just asks for something real.
Yes, and I think that's what makes it powerful. It doesn't create pressure, it creates direction.
Direction. I like that word. Because sometimes we don't need speed. We just need to know where we are going.
Exactly. And when you ask that question, what can I do today? The answer is usually very simple.
Not something big, just something possible.
Yes, and that possible feeling changes everything. Because when something feels possible, you are more likely to do it.
And when you do it, even in the small way, you feel a bit different at the end of the day.
That's so true. I've noticed that the days when I do even one small thing, I feel more at peace at night.
Me too. It's not about doing a lot. It's about not ignoring what matters to you.
Yes, because when you ignore it, even quietly, it stays in your mind.
And it creates that background tension again.
Exactly. But when you act, even in a small way, that tension becomes lighter.
You feel like you are in alignment with yourself.
That's such a good way to say it. In alignment.
Because you are doing something that matches what you care about.
Yeah, and I think that's where real satisfaction comes from. not from big achievements, but from small actions that feel true.
That's very deep and also very simple.
Yeah, simple, but not always easy to remember.
True, because life gets busy, our mind gets distracted, and we forget these small ideas.
That's why I think conversations like this are important. Not to learn something new every time, but to remember what we already know in a clearer way.
I agree. Sometimes we don't need new information. We need a new perspective.
Yes, or maybe a softer perspective.
Softer, that's a very good word.
Because when we are too strict with ourselves, everything feels heavy. But when we are a bit softer, things feel more possible.
And when things feel possible, we move.
Exactly.
You know, I'm starting to feel something different compared to the beginning of this conversation. At first, there was a bit of heaviness, talking about feeling stuck, comparing, delaying.
But now it feels lighter. Not because everything is solved, but because it feels more manageable.
In your own time.
At your own pace.
Yes, at your own pace.
That feels right.
It really does. There's something very quiet, but very powerful about what we just said. At your own pace. I feel like those words can change how someone sees their whole journey if they really understand them.
I agree, because most of the pressure we feel comes from trying to match someone else's pace or some invisible timeline we created in our minds.
Yeah, and when we let go of that, even a little, something inside us relaxes. Not completely, but enough to breathe.
And when you can breathe, you can think more clearly. You can see your situation in a more realistic way.
Exactly. And maybe that's what many of us need. Not more effort, but more clarity.
That's interesting, because we often think effort is the solution to everything.
Yes, but effort without clarity can feel like pushing in the wrong direction.
And that's exhausting.
Very exhausting. But when you have clarity, even small effort feels meaningful.
Because you know why you are doing it.
Yeah. And you also accept that it will take time.
You accept the process, not just the result.
Exactly.
You know, something just came to my mind. I think many people believe that if something is slow, it's not working. But maybe slow is the only way for something to truly stay.
That's such a beautiful thought, and I think it's very true. Fast change can feel exciting, but it doesn't always last.
Yes, but slow change becomes part of you.
It becomes natural.
And when something becomes natural, you don't have to force it anymore.
Exactly. It becomes who you are, not something you try to be.
That connects again to what we said about identity.
Yes. Slowly becoming someone who tries, someone who continues, someone who doesn't give up easily.
Not perfect, just consistent.
Yes, just consistent in a human way, not in a strict way.
That's an important difference.
It really is. Because strict consistency feels like pressure, but human consistency feels flexible.
And flexibility allows you to continue even when life is not perfect.
Exactly. Because life will never be perfect.
Never.
Yes, and maybe accepting that is part of the process too.
Definitely. Because when you expect perfection, you create disappointment. But when you accept imperfection, you create space to continue.
That's a very powerful shift.
It is, and I feel like we've been slowly building toward this understanding through everything we said.
Yes, without forcing it, just discovering it step by step.
Just like the process we are talking about.
Exactly.
You know, I'm thinking about someone listening right now. Maybe they are sitting quietly. Maybe they feel a bit lost. Maybe they want to improve but don't know how to start.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And I feel like what we are really saying to them is not do more, but be a little kinder to yourself and start small.
That's exactly it. Not more pressure, just a different approach.
A more realistic approach.
Yes, one that actually fits real life with all its ups and downs.
Because real life is not linear.
No, it goes up, down. Sometimes it stops. Sometimes it moves slowly.
And that's okay.
Yes, that's completely okay.
I think many people need to hear that it's okay to move slowly, to feel unsure, to take breaks and come back again.
Yes, because those things don't mean failure. They are part of the journey.
Exactly.
You know, I feel like if we could give just one message from this whole conversation, it would be something like, you don't need to become a different person. You just need to take one small step again and again.
That's a very strong message.
It feels simple, but also very deep.
And very real.
Yes, real.
Exactly. And I think that's something many people need to hear, especially if they feel tired or stuck. You don't need to fix your whole life in one day. You don't need to become fluent tomorrow. You don't need to be perfect to begin.
Because small steps fit into real life.
Exactly. And real life is not perfect. Some days you feel motivated, some days you don't. Some days you try, some days you rest.
And all of that is part of the process, not something outside of it.
Yes, that's such an important point. Rest is not failure. Slowing down is not failure. Even stopping for a while is not failure.
The only real failure is giving up completely.
Yeah, and even that is not something final because you can always come back.
That idea, you can always come back, I think it's one of the most comforting thoughts.
It really is because it removes that fear of making mistakes or losing progress. You know that no matter what happens, you can begin again.
That's such a beautiful way to say it.
It feels true because Every experience, even the difficult ones, teaches you something.
Yes, and that knowledge stays with you, even if you don't see it immediately.
Yes, and maybe they feel a bit disappointed in themselves. You are not late.
You are not too slow.
Exactly. Because your life, your time, your energy, they're all unique. And you don't need to run through that door. You can just take a small step toward it.
Just one small step.
Yes, because understanding is one thing, but applying it in daily life is something else. And I think what people really need is not just inspiration, but something they can actually use tomorrow.
So maybe we can talk about what this looks like in a normal day, not a perfect day, just a real one.
I like that. Let's imagine a simple day. You wake up, maybe you feel a bit tired, maybe you don't feel very motivated.
Yes, and the first important thing is this. You don't need to feel motivated to start. That's something we said before, but it's very important to repeat.
Motivation is not the starting point. Action is.
Exactly. So instead of asking, do I feel like doing something, you can ask, what is one small thing I can do anyway?
That question is very powerful because it removes emotions from control. You don't wait for a feeling. You just choose a small action.
And that action can be very simple. Maybe you say one sentence out loud. Maybe you think in English for a few minutes. Maybe you listen to something while you are doing something else.
Yeah, because doing creates movement, and movement creates change.
And once you do something small, something interesting happens. Your mind starts to shift a little.
Yes, you move from I didn't do anything to I did something.
And that small change in how you see yourself is very important.
Because identity grows from actions, not from thoughts alone.
And that new identity supports your next action.
So it becomes a cycle, but a positive one this time.
Yes, real confidence is just trust. Trust that you can show up again, even if it's not perfect.
And that trust is built slowly through small actions repeated over time.
Exactly. Not through big promises, but through small consistency.
And consistency doesn't mean doing something perfectly every day. It means coming back, even when you stop.
Yeah. Coming back is more important than never stopping.
Because in real life, everyone stops sometimes.
Everyone.
And I think this is where many people feel stuck. Not because they can't improve, but because they think stopping means failure.
But stopping is just part of the process.
Yes, it's a pause, not an ending.
And when you see it like that, it becomes easier to continue.
Because you don't feel like you are starting from zero every time.
Exactly. You are continuing with more awareness.
You know, there is also something very practical we can say here. If someone wants to improve their English in a real way, they don't need a complicated system.
No, they need something simple that fits their life.
For example, using small moments during the day, thinking in English while walking, describing things around you, repeating simple phrases.
Yeah, bringing English into your life instead of separating it as something special.
Because when it becomes part of your life, it becomes easier to continue.
And more natural.
And when something feels natural, you don't resist it.
Exactly. That's the goal. Not to force, but to integrate.
Integrate. That's a great word.
Because you are not adding something heavy to your life. You are just gently including it.
And that changes your whole experience.
Yes, it becomes lighter, more flexible, more human.
And I think that's the most important message from everything we said.
Yes, keep it human.
Not perfect.
Not fast.
Not stressful.
Yes, real.
Real and consistent in a gentle way.
And if someone listening right now feels overwhelmed, I think we can say this very clearly.
You don't need to do everything.
You don't need to be perfect.
You don't need to feel ready.
You don't even need to feel confident.
You just need to begin.
In a small way.
And continue when you can.
And come back when you stop.
That's it.
That's enough.
More than enough.
Because real change is not built in one big moment.
It's built in many small moments.
Quiet moments.
Honest moments.
Moments where you choose to try, even a little.
And those moments add up.
Always.
Even when you don't see it.
Especially then.
So, if you remember one thing from this whole conversation,
let it be this.
You are not stuck.
You are in the process.
And the process is working, even if it's slow.
So trust it just a little.
And trust yourself, just a little.
That's enough to begin.
And enough to continue.
Always. I think we can make this very clear and structured now, but still keep it natural and realistic. So instead of giving random advice, we can go step by step, almost like a simple path that someone can follow in daily life without feeling overwhelmed. Because I believe people don't need more information. They need clarity and something they can actually use every day.
Yes, I like that idea. Because when things are clear and simple, it becomes easier to take action instead of just thinking about it.
So let me start with the first step. And I want to explain it in a detailed way so that anyone listening can really understand how to apply it in real life without confusion.
So, step 1 is this. Start thinking in English in very small, natural moments during your day, without forcing yourself to create complex sentences and without worrying about making mistakes. Because the goal here is not to be perfect, but to slowly train your brain to use English as a tool for thinking instead of something you only use when you study.
I think this is one of the most important steps because many people understand English but never really use it in their thoughts. So the language stays passive instead of active.
Exactly. And to make this practical, you don't need to sit down and practice thinking. You can simply use moments that already exist in your life, like when you are walking somewhere, waiting for something, or even doing simple tasks. And you can describe what you see, what you feel, or what you are planning in very simple English sentences, even if they feel repetitive or basic.
And I think the key point here is not to stop when you don't know a word, because that is where many people lose momentum.
Yes, that's very important because if you don't know a word, you can just use another word or explain it in a simple way because the goal is to keep the flow of thinking, not to create perfect sentences.
So, step 2 is this: speak out loud regularly, even if you are alone, because speaking is a physical skill, not only a mental one. And if you don't practice using your voice, your mouth, and your rhythm, you will always feel blocked when it's time to speak in real situations.
That's very true because many people say, I understand everything, but I can't speak. And the reason is usually that they don't practice speaking enough in a safe environment.
Exactly. And speaking alone is actually one of the safest and most effective ways to build confidence because there's no pressure, no judgment, and no fear of making mistakes in front of others. So you can experiment freely.
And how long should someone do this every day?
Honestly, even 2 or 3 minutes is enough to start because consistency is more important than duration. And over time, those few minutes will become more natural and maybe even longer without effort.
Step 3 is this: use listening as an active habit, not just something passive in the background. Because many people listen to English content but don't really engage with it, and that limits their progress significantly.
Yeah, I think many people believe that just hearing English is enough. But without attention, it doesn't create strong learning.
Exactly. So instead of just listening, you can focus on small things like recognizing words you already know, noticing how sentences are formed, or even repeating short parts after the speaker, which helps you connect listening with speaking.
That repetition part is very powerful because it also improves pronunciation and confidence.
Yes, and it also helps you feel the rhythm of the language, which is something you cannot learn from grammar rules.
Step 4 is this: build a small English environment around you so that the language becomes part of your daily life instead of something separate. Because the more you see and interact with English naturally, the more familiar it becomes.
That makes a lot of sense because environment shapes behavior without effort.
Exactly. And this doesn't require big changes. You can do simple things like changing your phone language, following English content on social media, writing small notes in English, or even naming objects around you in English.
And over time, these small exposures add up.
Yes, and they create a feeling of familiarity, which reduces fear and resistance.
Step 5 is this: focus on communication, not perfection, because many people stop themselves from speaking or trying simply because they are afraid of making mistakes. And this fear blocks real progress.
I think this is one of the biggest problems for learners.
It really is, because if your goal is perfection, you will always feel not ready. But if your goal is communication, you can start immediately, even with limited vocabulary.
And mistakes become part of the process, not something to avoid.
Exactly. And every mistake actually teaches you something, even if you don't notice it immediately.
Step 6 is this: repeat simple things often instead of always trying to learn new and difficult things, because repetition builds confidence, fluency, and automatic thinking, while constant complexity creates stress and confusion.
That's very interesting, because many people think they need to learn something new every day.
Yes, but in reality, using the same simple structures many times is what creates fluency, because your brain becomes faster and more comfortable with those patterns.
So simple is not bad. Simple is actually powerful.
Exactly.
Step 7 is this: be patient and consistent, because real progress in language learning is slow, and it often feels invisible in the beginning. But if you continue with small actions, the results will come naturally over time.
I think this is the hardest part for many people.
Yes, because we want quick results, but language learning is not a fast process. It is something that grows slowly, like we said before.
And stopping too early is what prevents many people from reaching their potential.
Exactly. So the goal is not to do everything perfectly, but to continue, even in a small way, even on days when you don't feel motivated.
That's a very realistic approach.
And I think that's the most important thing we can say. Keep it simple, keep it real, and keep going.
Yeah, that's what creates real change.
Always.